Club members. I'm Jen.
And I'm Carrie.
And this is Warhammer 40k Book Club, where we read from a crag. This is episode number 105, and our book is Cipher, Lord of the Fallen by John French. It tells the daring escape of Cipher from Terra. Does he escape? Obviously, yes. We posted several questions on our website, WH40kbookclub.com, and we encourage participation in our conversations via Twitter,
Sorry,
YouTube,
I just spilled water all over the goddamn place.
Turn this podcast around. We can't have anything nice. Spoiler warning. Carrie has spilled her water. And if you haven't yet read this book, go to the site, check out the book and the questions, and then come back to this post as we're going to be discussing it from start to finish in great detail. Even though it's short, a lot happens in here. So, in addition to Carrie spilling her water, lots happens. Did you like the book?
I loved it. Bravo, John French.
I liked it better when it was called the Alfarius Primarch novel.
So unfair.
I will say this. This is, without question, the best John French story I have ever read. I am going to make a lot of knocks and rips at how he also clearly really enjoyed the Alfarius Primarch novel. And there's a lot of meta stuff going on with this book that I really struggle with that we'll talk about. But narrative structure-wise, I loved it. I absolutely loved the conversation. I loved Cypher's tone of voice. I loved, even though I figured out his identity is David Xanatos in the Warhammer 40k universe, Cipher, the David Xanatos gambit. I enjoyed the hell out of this book. My husband and I both really enjoyed it. I laughed a lot during it. I feel the need to really stress how much I liked it because I am going to poke fun of it a lot, but also because I've notoriously ripped on John French and loved it. Did not outstay its welcome.
No, it's not. See, you kept saying
much
Alfarius,
like Cypher.
And I'm like,
got
no,
in, got out.
Ahriman. Especially, you pointed out the Xanatos Gambit. That is Ahriman's thing, and that's what John French always did in the Ahriman novels. So I see him more as an Ahriman character than Mike Brooks as Alfarius.
It was the constant cheeky, is this true? And the way that it basically starts with, this is going to be a lie. And then at the end, was it true? I was like, Well, and here's my thing about this, and this is why I make the Alfarius Primarch novel comments, is that we're going to talk about that later. I'm going to dive into that in a second. Let's talk about what parts stood out to you, because so much stood out to me in this book.
Well, first 2 pages, I had to put the book down, and I had to pull out a campaign book so I could get the timeline straight. And so I was like, okay, so when did he get to Terra? So I pulled this thing out,
Bless your heart.
read this entire story, cover to cover. Could I have gone online and read a summary? Yes. Not the point. The point is I have it here, and I wanted to look up some really quick notes to see, like, how did he get to Terra? Like, I thought I remembered him, but I needed to know the timeline. I needed to know the timeline of Reboot's Rising, because that has always been very fuzzy when he got to Terra. So the whole thing with the Red Corsairs, I didn't realize all of that was before he even got to Terra. So all of that is before Watchers of the Throne. It was just a nice thing to have here was this timeline. I think the thing that stood out for me the most was I love the fact that Cipher literally addressed every single question about him in the Codex. Everything cracked me up. I'm like, okay, yeah. So I was like, well, yeah, but what about this? Oh, right there. He says the exact same thing. And the funny thing is, like, I'm reading the afterword in my copy, and John French talked about how he got so many codices out to make sure he did this character right, which I just love. Like, he got the Chaos Codex, he got the Dark Angels one, he got these, so he got the timeline correct. You know,
it's a tricky thing, right? Because when this book takes place, yeah.
Well, like on on my page 66, he goes into all the theories of his sword. Awesome.
Oh, yes.
Like, He just broke down every single theory that is posted on the Warhammer Lexicanum right now, what that sword could possibly be. It's almost like he's poking fun at the fans. Yeah, I see your theories out there, but let me just tell you, who knows? Does it really matter? The answer is yes. Although
Yes, it does matter, actually.
Of course, and there was like several lines in here that, you know, maybe it kind of goes to like who I think it is. Of course, and it plays back and forth. Is this Zahariel or is this the original Cipher that Zahariel, said, make sure his body is never found? And he exits stage right, but we never really see exactly what happens. It's like when he talks about how the Emperor who made me, what immediately made me think of is from Descent of Angels when the Emperor spoke to Zahariel. When Zahariel thwarted the assassination attempt. So, yeah. Oh, the other thing I loved is when he was just like, what do people think I'm going to do? Am I going to kill the Emperor? Am I going to present the sword? Maybe both, maybe neither. I was like, okay, that's right out of Lexicanum as well. That's awesome. I loved that kind of cheekiness with this character. Like this is honestly the first book I've seen, aside from that one short story that John French wrote about the other Cipher from the Horus Heresy, where I feel like he had fun writing it.
I will say this book was probably a blast to write. The cheekiness of the character, the cheekiness of him, the way that he phrases certain things. I really liked when they kind of realize where he's going and he's like, well, that wouldn't help unless I had the weapon. Oh, wait, do I? Do I have that? Awesome. Again, definitely Xanatos Gambity, because literally everything in this book lines up exactly as he was expecting. Having said that, I'm willing to give it to him. It's so much fun. And I love any book where the character develops a rapport with the reader.
Right.
Like, it very much sounds like you're sitting there and he's basically just chit-chatting with you. Like, oh, let me tell you this wild story. I really liked that part of it. The things that really stood out to me that I really liked about this book, I loved the whole concept of the dark cells. I thought the way that he described the dark cells were fun. They were awesome. It definitely sounds like a Blackstone fortress going on under there. I really liked his comments on Hecaron. So when he talks about them walking through the dark cells, and he talks about how they basically have to like memorize where they're going and have this idea. And he's like, if anything, if you ever questioned how far removed from humanity these things are, that should answer your question right there. I also like when he talks about how like they don't feel fear. Like he really compares and contrasts them to the Space Marines. And one of my favorite lines is when he talks about, have you ever seen a custodian fight
Yeah.
a Space Marine? And I'm like, of course, all the time. And he's like, it's like a lion fighting wolves. And
well, he said most people say it's like a lion fighting wolves. He said, but what's actually like is like lightning fighting
when he
wolves.
describes that, when he describes the battle and the way that Hecaron is just tearing through the Fallen, my husband and I both were like, we love this guy. I like this guy. I need 3 more of them. Like he was a very fun character. I like the very dispassionate, very custodian-like custodians that we see throughout the series.
Kind of reminded me of Tommy Lee Jones' character in The Fugitive. Like, I don't care. You're just going back to prison. Like, I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what your story is. You're just going back to prison.
And of course, I loved the whole Court of Assassins. I loved that.
Oh God, I hate the assassins. I hate all of them. The whole
I
thing
love
made me
them
so
much. I love them so much.
Just all of them just like, oh, but why do we have to give it back to you? Because this is a fucking custodian. We don't answer to you. Yeah, this is why I hate all of you.
They don't though. Like it true though. And that's one of those
to answer to somebody. That's the problem with them.
Well, I mean, that's part of the whole concept of the Lords of Terra in general, right? Is that who's in charge here? And eventually, once you make your way up,
we need another Malkador, is what the problem is.
Ain't that the truth? They need a lot in the Warhammer 40k universe, but that's one of them. So, do you like? Let's start. There's two things. There's two pieces of Cipher. I feel like there's Cipher the character, as in he stars in a book, and then there's Cipher the figure within Warhammer 40k. Do you like him as a character?
Oh yeah.
I loved this version of him. I loved this, even though, and I'll get into this in a second about him as a figure in Warhammer 40k. I can't stand him. I thought his personality was fun as hell on this. I thought he would. This was everything that I wanted him to be, and also didn't want him to be, and more. But again, the rapport, the dialogue, his tone, the way that he looks at the world. I'm here for it.
So as a character, I thought John French really made Cipher a good combination of Zahariel and the original Cipher to really kind of make you guessing which one is which. Because the original Cipher, well, not the OG Cipher, who was too old to become a space marine, but the Cipher for Luther, OG Luther Cipher. Gosh, this is what problems when you don't know their original names. He had no idea what was going on in this guy's head at all. You knew at one point, yeah, he's aligned with the Watchers of the Dark, but is he on the side of the Imperium? Is he on the side of Chaos? You don't really know exactly what he's doing. You don't exactly understand his full intentions. So I love that French combined that with Zahariel, because there's also a lot of things in here that were very much like how Zahariel was before he became Cipher. So it makes me once again super happy I've been reading the Horus Heresy so I can do these comparisons, because otherwise I wouldn't know anything about Cipher or Zahariel, the OG Cipher or the Zahariel. So I love his rendition of him. The other thing about the OG Cipher is that he wouldn't start fights. He wouldn't be a part of them. But he would just kind of happen to be there and maybe kind of do little nudges. Maybe. Because when Zahariel killed, I don't remember the guy's name, the loyal Dark Angel at Luther's feast, the other Cipher kind of had nudged something in the warp that made Zahariel think that this guy was going to betray Luther. So it's so fitting. And honestly, and I would actually love it if this Cipher was not Zahariel at all, and it was the OG Cipher that was just like, you know what? I try to do things nice. Fuck you guys. Fuck all of this. I'm just watching the world burn as I go. I really don't care about any of this stuff. But for the fact that he's leading everybody makes you think it can't be that Cipher. It's got to be Zahariel. It could be something totally new. Zahariel's dead or whatever. Who knows?
What if he's like the Dread Pirate Roberts?
That. I was actually just thinking that. We don't know.
We don't know who he is. I mean, obviously he's David Xanatos, which technically could be canon because of Puck. But I would actually, so he is one of those characters that, because I have such mixed feelings about him, if they came out and they were like, okay, he's Zahariel, I'd be like, okay. If he comes out and he's like, I'm actually an Alpha Legion member, I'd be like, okay. If they came out and said that he was the Dread Pirate Roberts, basically, I would actually be very intrigued by that. This idea that he's not, it's not necessary, it's the name. It's the name of being Cipher.
But that
it's
was
a
the whole thing with
commitment
the Dark
to,
Angels. That when you became Cipher, you always wore a hooded cowl. You lost your name.
Absolutely. But I would love if that's been continuing down the line.
That would be really cool too.
Every few thousand years, another guy.
That would be really cool too. But I think that's one reason why I think John French, he kind of did a combination here. So it's not so obvious it's Zahariel if it is Zahariel.
Right.
Or obvious that it's not him.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And honestly, I think I would be disappointed if Black Library or Games Workshop came out and said, this is who he is.
Yes, I think.
Why do you have to show me what's in the briefcase?
Exactly. The mystery is part of him. And that actually makes, I was actually really concerned about this book that John French wasn't going to be able to resist being like, You see who this is? Like, oh, back when my name was never mind. Like, I was really worried that he was really gonna point to Zahariel. I was worried that he was gonna point to Racer X. Um,
Oh my God. I
I
would love it if he was Racer X, mysterious Racer X.
Mysterious Racer X. Like, I like that he resisted that urge and that he kept it. Again, this is one of those mysteries I think would be sadder if they revealed it.
Mm-hmm.
As a figure within Warhammer 40k, I can't stand Cipher because to me he feels like great value Alfarius. He feels like Alfarius for the 40k universe, right? Like, well, we can't really have Alfarius because we haven't really quite figured out what we're doing there. So we're gonna have Cipher in here, and he's off doing the is he loyal? Is he not? Is he loyal? Is he not? I don't know. I get really sick and tired of that.
Oh, see, I've never once thought of him as loyal. Never the Fallen? No.
Oh man.
He's loyal. Okay, so if this is Zahariel, they're loyal to Caliban. They're loyal to Luther.
Yes, and we saw that a little bit with Azkar, right? Where he goes back in his mindscape, he goes back to Caliban. And this book,
oh my God, that made me so sad. That he missed Caliban.
Me too.
I was like, oh.
It was sad about a Dark Angel, you guys. Again, I was like the second time ever. That was it was a lot for me to deal with emotionally. Actually, Corleil ripped me up the hardest.
Poor
Bacarial.
Carlisle, whatever.
Miserable, loyal Corleil, and then poor Bacarial. They all he did a really good job of fleshing out. Oh, Bacarial made me so sad. But this book, so here's the funny thing about this. I hate the Dark Angels. This book is my thesis statement why. So I will forever love it. But specifically with Cipher, as a character, I don't really like him. But I thought this book was really fun about it, and they did a really good job of laying bare a lot of my complaints with the Dark Angels. And it's not really that, is he loyal? Is he not? The Dark Angels, and I've always said this, the Dark Angels are not loyal. They are not a loyalist Space Marine chapter. They are loyal to themselves. They are not worshipping chaos, and they are not actively trying to help Avedon. But they're not necessarily trying to help the Emperor. And talk more about this in a second, but the Dark Angels are like the Poe Dameron of the Warhammer 40k universe, where they have killed more of the Empyrean citizens than probably any of the Fallen have. This book did such a nice job of at least making me be like, okay, I understand that this character has a purpose in the 40k universe. And we're going to talk a lot about that because the ending of this book, I was like, oh dear. A lot of thoughts. But so let's switch over to Mordecai and his band of merry followers. I loved how much they juxtapositioned one another, especially with Nariel versus Corleil.
Mm-hmm.
They each had their little loyal buddy who...
Yep.
Sadness. But how did you like that comparison? Did you like them being these kind of mirror foils?
Oh, yeah. Especially the fact that they were both very strong librarians. So another reason why I'm thinking like this is Zahariel, but at least I think Cipher has to be a librarian from here on out. Otherwise, if it's not, then we're going to know it's not Zahariel. That's all I can really say about it. But honestly, the whole thing with Mordecai, I was laughing the whole time. I was like, this is why nobody likes you guys. You guys, I understand you figure out, shit, they're here. They're going to find out. We can't let them find out. You know what? The fact that there's demons invading right now because of the, Cicatrix Maledictum, this is amazing. Let's do this now. They'll never notice just another explosion out here in the palace walls. It seems like a great time to go invade the palace. Bruh. This is why nobody likes you guys. And this is why you guys have to go throw shade on other chapters all the time. To get people to look at others like...
Okay, so What would they have done had the Cicatrix Maledictum not opened? What would they have done here? Like, you have the perfect, again, it's a little too perfect, but you have the perfect cover story, right? But, okay, here's why John French and this book are now my favorite, and John French has to be one of my new favorite authors. I always had a problem with the Dark Angels, and I could never articulate it. And then Mordecai did so for me. It's when he's talking with Cipher. No, so he's talking with Corleone. And Corleone basically, it's like that scene from the end of The Prestige where he's like, you've done terrible things here on Terra. Like, you killed a custodian. And Mordecai says, yeah, but you made us. It's your fault we have to do this stuff. And that right there, they never own their evil. Because even by Warhammer 40k standards, like these guys, they have, I mean, how many planets have we seen the Dark Angels Exterminatus because the Fallen might have been on that planet? Like, they've killed billions of souls to hide their secret. And they never seem to wrestle with it or address it, right?
Which is one thing I loved about Gav Thorpe's Angels of Darkness, right? Because they almost do that again. Because a Fallen came in and stole Gene Seed and those big virus releases. So, choices to go after the Fallen, kill him, take back the Gene Seed, or see where they are, and risk the entire planet being infected and dying, or seal the fortress and only they die and the rest of the planet survives. And the interrogator chaplain is like, this is a horrible choice. I don't know what to do. And this one guy that he didn't know was in the inner circle is like, we're leaving. We're going after the Fallen. And he was like, we're forsaking our duty to the Emperor if we leave. So he kills him so they all die in the fortress. I loved that book because it showed that awful choice that the Dark Angels have to make. And it's like, so few of them make the right choice. That was an example of them making the right choice. But yes.
I was about to say, like, how many books do we see that right choice being made?
That's actually one reason why I love that meme of the Area 51 Naruto runner. It's like, because like the guy talking on the news is just like, this is what we're doing, like to save the Imperium. And then they have over the Naruto runner behind Dark Angels when they see a Fallen because they're like, oh, we gotta go. Like, there might be like a sign of the Fallen over here. And it kind of makes me sad because like I'm reading, like I said, I'm just rereading this campaign book. It talks about the Red Corsairs, how they fell from the astral claws and all of this. Renegade chapters happen all the time from the original chapters.
Yep.
And it's amazing how the Dark Angels have not figured out that they can just claim that that's a renegade chapter. They have somehow ingrained this in their heads that this is what they have to do. So now that the Lion is back, it's going to be interesting when he brings back the Fallen into the fold, which makes me like, I got to have another campaign book I need to go read because apparently that really gets into how he's doing that.
That was my first thought is I'm like, I need another Lion book. I need to see what happens next and what goes on with this. Because again, when you have people like Mordecai who are willing to be like, oh yeah, no, we totally killed the custodian because this is your fault. It's not us. We have to do these evil things because of you. We have no, this is not on us. Like they take no real responsibility.
Now
I can't wait for the Lion to get hold of that and be like,
now, did the Fallen betray the Dark Angels? 100%. Is it the Fallen's fault that Caliban is gone? 100%. At the same time, you can't always break eggs to make the omelet.
Right. And I do like this idea that they're starting to invest, they're starting to look at more. And we really saw it in Mike Brooks's Lion book where, because that's one of the complaints I'd always had about the Fallen is that, okay, half the Legion doesn't just decide chaos is cool, okay? And I liked the idea when he runs in to the couple of Fallen who are like, look, like this was a horrible misunderstanding. We were pissed at you, but we're not really down with the whole chaos thing either. And like Corleone, right? He's like, look, I follow you, Cipher, but you don't get the impression that he's like, heck yeah, chaos. Ascar.
Well, neither is Ascar.
He's not, but he is one of those guys that the lion would probably have to do a lot of
But he's
a lot
very
of one-on-one sort of stuff.
right. He's very
Because he's
angry.
very
He's
angry
very angry
and
at the
bitter.
lion.
And then you have Bacariel. Like, I feel like you get to see all three of the flavors, right? Where you have Corlael, who's just like, look, wrong place, wrong time. I don't really know what's going on. I'm still very loyal to my brothers. And then you had Ascar, who's like, I'm angry. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Then you have Bacariel. And I feel like that's like all of the types of the Fallen that you get.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked the way he showed that. And I liked Cipher. Again, one of the things I really like with the Trader Marines, or most of the Trader Marines, obviously not all of them, but this current of brotherhood. So when Cipher is like, can you blame me for not putting him down? Like, this was my brother. Like,
Right. When Askar's like, we can't save everybody, let's just go. And he's like, all of us are leaving or none of us are. Like, he was very adamant, like, we're all in this
well, it's
together.
actually, it's the scene in which the demon starts taking over Bacariel, and he's like, I think I kind of drove him to this. Like, I should have stopped. I should have intervened the second I saw him looking askance at the warp, right? Like, he's like, I had so many opportunities to take care of this. Can you blame me for not?
Mm-hmm.
No, bruh. I can't. I really cannot. Because
Like, but you even have some of that with the Alpha Legion, right? Like we saw that with Shroud of Night. How they kind of use some tools, but they're very much like, but we do not dalliance with demons. Like, we do not make pacts, with demons. So you always kind of have that very, very fine line. And actually, one thing I loved about this was that John French had Cipher dance also that fine line. We don't know what he does or not. And so if this is Zahariel, because Zahariel, his loyalty was to Caliban. What was going on in Caliban in that last novel? We discovered there's lots of evil. Caliban's a death world. There's chaos. The beasts were creations of chaos. It's what the Watchers of the Dark, the Watchers of the Dark, which we're trying to prevent, was the Great Ouroboros, which I wish I could remember now how the British pronounced it, because every time they said it, I was like, the what? Ouroboros. That's what it was. Ouroboros. I was like, if I didn't know you guys talking about the Ouroboros, I've been like, what are you saying? About the Ouroboros that lives in the planet. And the Watchers of the Dark and the OG Cipher were trying to prevent Svahariel from waking the Ouroboros. But Zahariel's like, but this is our planet. This is our home. Of course we're supposed to be part of the Ouroboros. So John French, dancing on that, like, maybe this is Zahariel who's become one with the Ouroboros. Maybe this isn't. Who's just kind of like, nah, with chaos. So good. Really, really enjoyed this.
I liked the idea. The thing that I liked about him, one of the scenes that I really liked is that you really start liking him, like, as a person. You start liking him, and he's kind of fun. And then he destroys that communications area. And he talks about how much he enjoys it. He enjoys slaughtering these people. And then he kind of turns to the camera, figuratively speaking, obviously, and says, are you surprised by this? That I enjoy this?
Which is like what makes me think
nope, not really.
Not Zahariel and not the OG Cipher. So that's very fascinating. I love it.
But well, also, but it's been 10,000 years too.
Right. Exactly. It's like, it's so great. But I love how he's talking the communication. It's like, does this really do me any good?
No.
But it gets them thinking of where I'm going to be.
Well, exactly. And it does. It gets them actually thinking. So speaking of them, let's talk about our motley crew of Terrans to whom we are introduced. We have the assassins. We have Hecaron. We have Ansia. Were you invested in them? Did you like any of them? I know you don't like the assassins, but...
Oh my God, the assassin. And then they're like, that wasn't him. You tricked us and left. Like, can you guys, like, stay and, like, get the whole story here before you just make snap judgments? Drives me insane.
No, because they weren't down with this to begin with.
Because they didn't want to give
also,
up...
It is...
They didn't want to give up a pretty weapon because they have problems. It's really what this is about.
I actually like the idea. That was one thing I actually really liked, was when they were like, yeah, we sent it to you. And he's like, we need to get it back because it's dangerous. And Kratos is like, do you have any idea how many dangerous weapons we have in our basement, basically. Like this idea that if you have a weapon that cannot fall into other people's hands, of course, who would you give it to? The assassins who will hide it and make sure that no one ever finds it. Like, I do like the idea. And I actually really liked that when they're like, okay, we need it back. And he's like, you gave it to us because you thought it was so dangerous. It couldn't be out in the open. And to Kratos' point, Cipher ends up with it again anyways.
Well, of course he does.
Had it never left the fortress, he wouldn't have had it. But Hecaron convinces him to bring it out. He kills Kratos. He takes the it's one of those things.
Second guess the assassins and think, okay, they had a point, because that doesn't make me happy.
I mean, I'm totally with you on it too, because at first when they were like, oh no, I'm not here to argue that they're nice or charming people. They were complete and total assholes. And the fact that it's not just that they're like, friend, here's a logical explanation, very dispassionate. Oh, no, he's cheeky. He's not only cheeky, he's flip the entire time. Right? Like, oh, is something bothering you a little bit? With my little blunter over here, is something bothering you? Like, he's so rude and shitty about it. But
which is what made me love it when Ansia lawyered his ass.
Okay, when I was reading that scene, I literally like Z-stamped after when she was like, I'm sorry, something must be bothering my head. I was so emotionally invested in her character. The whole description of her with like the obsidian orb circling around her and the idea of the Doom Scryers, I was like, I'm here for all of this.
The crazy thing is,
for every part of
when
it.
they're describing the Doom Scryers, I was immediately like, okay, which book am I going to have to go back into? The Horus Heresy. They were talking about a type of Cypher that they had to kill them all. Was that these people or was that something else? Like, things run together when you read 44 books, people.
Yeah, that's probably true. But I loved her whole concept. I loved everything she was able to do. And I did love how he keeps talking about, he's like, do you understand how dangerous these people are? Like, do you understand what these people are doing right now? I thought she was great. But again, it does go back to had Hecaron and Ansia not play. And that was one of those things when he picks up the sword, I was like, oh, you dumb bastards.
Well, the crazy thing
had the assassins just been like, sorry, we don't respect your authority and you already asked us to hide it. We're not pulling it out of here.
The thing was so crazy because they kind of touched on this at that very end. You know, Ansia, when she was having her visions and she was like, this could be a self-fulfilling prophecy. It could happen if we don't do anything. It could happen if we do something, like we're not sure how to act. And it was like, and it was one of those that it happened because y'all did something.
Right.
If y'all had done nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Had you done, and that's one of those things that like the self-fulfilling prophecy, and Cipher even says like, can always count on these people to fall into place. And that is one of the bad sides of her, is that she doesn't really realize until the last minute that she's like, oh my God. No, we've been looking wrong the whole way. When they talk about her going back into the vision and he's like, she sees me and she sees me smiling at her because he knew that this was going to happen. Like in some ways it was very predictable. I really liked that whole interplay. I loved Hecaron. Thought he was a phenomenal character. I loved Ansia. Everybody that we get to see in this book, like John French did, again, maybe because it's short, but I feel as though he did more for characterization in this itty bitty book.
This proves my point. All right? Because the short stories he writes in the Horus Heresy are fantastic. The short story he writes about Sigismund coming to his father and saying, coming to Doran and being like, by the way, like, I told them to stay here because I'm helping you. And Doran's like, you're not my son. That whole thing was great. Every Sigismund short story he writes is great. The short story he wrote about, it was part of the Garrow short stories about them trying to, they go to Caliban to find out what's going on because they haven't heard anything from the Dark Angels. And Cipher is basically like, you need to leave.
It's been a spell.
Like, Because like Luther arrests them and Cipher helps them escape with the Watches of the Dark. It's like, you just need to go. You need to go and see what you've seen here. And then that never happens. That was fantastic. This was great. The Harusian Wars, I really like those books. And I think it's because those are brand new characters that he's created. Let's be real. Am I looking forward to his first full novel in the Horus Heresy, which is my next book, Talern? No. Because like...
He pads
I think he's
a
great
he's a big
short
patter.
I think he's a great short story and novella writer. And there is nothing wrong with that. Some people do not write short stories well.
No, some people can't trim down, or they trim down too much.
I never could. Like whenever I'm a short story class, I sucked at short stories because I kept wanting to go on with exposition and character development, dialogue. I could not keep it succinct. And people who can do a short story well are amazing. I think John French is one of those.
I think he is, because he doesn't pad. He ends up getting to the point very quickly. I actually would argue that this is the perfect length.
You didn't read the Ariman short stories. No.
No.
Well, those were great.
I actually loved this in particular, this length right here, because he had enough to build these characters. We cared about the characters. He had enough to tie back to the Harusian Wars, which I don't mind telling you. As soon as they mentioned the Desolate City, I was like, oh, you son of a bitch. Now we're going to have to go back and read that short story collection from your Harusian Wars. Yes, we are.
No, because that's fucking prequels. I refuse.
But here's the thing, though. We've just talked about what a good short story writer he is. So,
can't.
Carrie?
Nope.
Somebody in the comments, please help me compare. Help me compare, Carrie. Help me convince Carrie that we need to do the thing. Anyways, I thought that was actually really nice without being heavy-handed.
If you agree that we need to read all of the other Caiaphas Cain books before the new one.
Oh, get the f out of here.
Those are my terms.
It is new. People want to hear about being glorious. They do not want to wait 2 years until you get through the entirety of the Horus Heresy, which, by the way, is flaming garbage. You read that dumpster fire. And then you decide to go back and read all the Caiaphas Cain books, which are going to be fun. But, oh, let's not forget you're also reading a bunch of short stories and a bunch of other stuff you're trying to catch up on right now. Not to mention the fact that we are two working mothers who have children who are busy.
I didn't decide to take over all of girls hockey in Colorado. I have a little more time than you.
I have so much buyer's remorse. I am not living my best life right now. This is a thing that I have done.
So, by the way, what you guys have just witnessed is like kind of how we talk to each other like on a daily basis when we're arguing what books to read. And she's like, there's no time for this. I'm like, maybe you don't have time because you decided to do all this.
Girl does not have time.
Yeah, but then you decided to do this. You decided to start your yoga business up again. I don't know what you're talking about.
Mommy and Daddy are fighting because of Cipher, which is a metaphor.
It is a metaphor.
It is a metaphor for Cipher and Mordecai here. And
in case you're wondering, anyway. I'm Cipher and she's Mordecai.
At this point, I kind of feel like it. There's been a lot going on the last few weeks. Yeah, unfortunately, there is like a curse to being a helper.
So I know normally I drink tea and nah, not tonight.
No, it's been a long few weeks.
Tonight's special.
But tonight's special. All right, let's really get into the meat of this. Since we already talked about the Desolate City a little bit, we talked about the link to the Harusian Wars. What was going on with Hecaron? Let's start there, because there's two parts to this question. What was going on with Hecaron, and why does Ansia not recall anything? It's time for theories. Because Hecaron is dead.
Yeah.
Like that statement when they're like, the wounds that had killed him hours ago, which you guys, I was so devastated. I was like, well, they're not going to kill. Oh.
My theory is with that is that he tapped into Sigismund. He became too angry to die. Honestly,
it almost seems like
I think would not surprise me if the custodes, if they have something that they feel like they have to do, they will not die till that one thing is done.
Right. He's just like, nope, gotta. But it's also like because if you remember, the person who speaks to him in his vision is a blunter. That's the guise it takes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of questions here. So obviously something is going on, and it's really at the end when they're like, he would have only done this if the principal had told him to. And why is like the fact that Ansia, a Doomscryer, does not remember any of this vision. Her memory's basically been wiped. Like, I guess what I'm tiptoeing around is,
did Papa E have something to do with this? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Did Jimmy Space, like,
Space.
did Jimmy Space come down and was like, bruh, like, but does that feed the whole dogma argument that have we tried turning it off and turning it back on again?
So
with this sword rumored to be the anathema.
Well,
I'll pour into the glass of wine while you think about it.
Okay, well, the sword's rumored a lot of things. I want to believe it's the lion sword. That's what I want to believe. But I could also believe that, honestly, if they tell me that sword is part of like one of the Athames, I'm just going to like throw books across the room because I can't handle this right now.
No, if all of like the shards of Erebus or whatever, they're like, when you combine them and then combine them with Cypher's sword, I'm out. I'm done. I'm done.
Again, I like that we don't know what Cypher's sword is.
I actually really like that too.
Yeah. Again, I don't need to see what's in the briefcase. Yes.
I'll be really honest and say, much like the Emperor actually waking up will be basically the end of days for 40k, I think there are certain things that will also be... And at this point, really, is there anything that they could tell you?
Finding out, is Alfarius and or Omegan actually dead? We don't need to know.
Again, you're starting down the like, those revelations will be like the precipice before the end of 40k.
But what I was going to say is what I found fascinating. So to that, the principal had something to do with this. What did, Corleil, what was his battle cry? For the lion. Okay. He's a fallen and saying for the lion. That says a lot to me. Which makes you just goes back to
do old habits die hard? Or
no, because on Caliban they stopped saying that a long time ago. If you read the Horus Heresy, and I'm from John French talking about the research he did with the codices, I'd be shocked if he didn't go back and read some of the Horus Heresy stuff with Gav Thorpe and how he set up that world, and even Mitch, whatever his name is, who wrote that first one. The point is, like, it's just we don't know. And if this sword, because in the campaign book, is that he told Reboot that he would rescue him from the Red Corsairs if he would take him to Terra. And Reboot agreed. Now, what he really wanted was to go in front of the Emperor, but Reboot didn't agree to that. He just agreed to take him to Terra. So when the custodes were like, oh, we'll take you to see your dad. And Cipher was like, well, I'm going too. And they're like, no, you're not. And he throws a fit. That's when Reboot's like, to prison. I don't want that sword anywhere near my dad. Because that's what this codex says is Reboot knows what the sword is.
Yes, exactly. He not only knows what it is, he recognizes it.
So I'm like, okay, this is just gotten like, so, this is so interesting. So what is this thing? What did he really want to do with the Emperor? Did the Emperor know? I would want to say that he does. And maybe that's why he did what he did.
So I fell down a rabbit hole, and I had to go back to some of the Covenant books and go back and read up about the Desolate City.
Okay.
If you recall,
no,
that cardinal is like, okay, the Desolate City clearly represents this destroyed future of mankind, or a destroyed city, and this is where the emperor resides. It is the emperor who is there, and that basically we need to bust him out of Hawk, right? If you recall, though, Covenant was looking around the city, and he's kind of like, "Oh no, 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 no! This is not the emperor. This is terrible. This is." He basically comes to the conclusion that this represents the destruction of mankind. And of course, all Hecaron says is not yet.
Right.
So, is this the Emperor? Or is this something else? Now, I don't necessarily believe that anything Kaus would be that subtle.
Right.
Like, I feel as though anything Slaneshi or Nurgly or certainly not Corn. Corn lacks anything
subtle.
that resembles subtle.
This is it'd be Zinch.
It'd be very Zinchy, right? But like, or
I mean,
Magnusy,
it could be
Lorgari.
Zinchy. Well, so again, as I dove into this campaign book, a lot of shit happened. Okay, this goes into the whole thing with the Kairos Fate Weaver. With the Kairos Fate Weaver. Reboot fighting Magnus. That was never in a book.
That old so-and-so. That's on the moon, right? On Luna?
No. It's before he even makes it to the solar system.
That's right. Who does he fight on Luna, though? He has to fight... Ugh, I'm getting confused because I had a lot of wine tonight.
Well, and not only that, but this stuff happened like back in 2017. Yeah. So, yeah, I was like, I totally forgot he'd fought Magnus. He fought Angron. All kinds of stuff.
Who hasn't?
Okay, that's true. I was like, he fights Angron again. It's kind of funny. Rematch. But yeah, so like Reboot's been like very busy before he shows up on Terra and was like, "Can I see my dad, please?" And they're like, "Do you know what's going on?" He's like, "Do you know what I've been doing?"
Yeah. I've been a smidge busy.
I've been busy. I was actually
into my calendar.
I was actually captured on a rare red Corsair ship. Like, just don't right now. It's like, reminds me of, in the Avengers movie when Captain America and all of them go onto that plane. They're like, "You can't." And he goes, "Son, just don't." That is Reboot. Son, just don't right now. So yeah, it's just like a lot of things happen, like with Magnus. Kairos Fate Weaver, all of that stuff happened with Reboot, so I could totally be like Zinch, like, "Oh yes,
it's all coming together."
Yeah,
I absolutely could see that. The fact that Cipher is needed, right? It's this idea that, well, you'll come in here someday. Now, to be fair, that's kind of vague, right? I need to go in there. Not yet. Now, it doesn't say how you're going to get in there or what you're going to do in there. It just says that someday you may get into there. That's a little vague. That's not very... if I were Cipher, I don't necessarily know that I would put that in the bank.
The crazy thing is like, Hecaron's not the only person, like, keeping you from going in there. Like, there's a lot of other custodes.
Well... I mean, arguably, the Cicatrix Maledictum has just opened.
Maybe not. They may be out in Terra, like, fighting.
Because if you recall, basically the thing that I loved about this book is that the first Watches of the Throne book is taking place on the other side.
Right.
And then also the Vaults of Terra books are also taking place over here.
Yeah, so we got like the Hollow Mountain part going on at the same time. Didn't really realize, honestly, until this book about how expansive that palace is.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
that's like when you look at the map and stuff like that, you're like, oh.
You know, and yet you don't until you get like this many stories.
Yes. And you start to really...
I
want everyone to know.
Makes me appreciate the Custodes Blood games a whole lot more.
Right. I want everyone to know that I really want to go to Kathmandu for a variety of reasons, but I really want to bring, like, my map of the Imperial Palace up there and be like, first. To Kathmandu, like I am not built for going up to. I have no desire to go up any further.
I'm
than
not mountain
Kathmandu.
climbing. The
No.
the only one I'd consider is Fuji,
No.
and that's just because it's very flat, and everybody does it.
Right. And Kathmandu is actually not that high. Kathmandu is actually lower than my house right now. Because I think it only sits at like 5,000 feet above sea
But
level.
you just want to go look up at Everest and be like, I know what's going to happen here.
That's a big goddamn mountain. They're going to build a palace up there someday.
Because there's no oceans and, the
Yeah, like
hive's
when
going
they
to be
say
built
that
up
it's
all the
in-
way up to there. And
Well, yeah, like at Kathmandu, I'm probably sitting at one of the gates or one of the hives or something like that, right? Like, oh my gosh.
it's probably the
This is one of my
lower
bucket list
hive.
items.
Let's be real. No, lower hive would actually be down in the ocean. So you'd be in the mid hive.
I was gonna say, are you saying that I could only afford to go to one of the lower hives? You're right, but rude.
That's probably
just
all
wanted
I
to
could
know.
afford.
This is one of my bucket list items. I really, really do want to go to Kathmandu. Also because I genuinely like Nepalese food. Anyways, not important right now.
I think I've ever had Nepalese food.
I don't even know where I was going with this now. Yeah, we were talking about how big the palace is.
Yes, the
I
palace
love,
is big.
for some reason, I love the idea of books and stories where they're like, basically, this whole book kind of read like, meanwhile, back at the corral. Because I know that all these other things are happening, but to your point, like this is probably Cicatrix Maledictum, the rift has just opened. This is your best cover. Now, granted, it makes you wonder
So-
when he's like, not yet. My first thought was, oh my
So-
God, this is going to happen again.
So what makes me laugh? So we've got the Cicatrix Maledictum has opened. The demons are flooding Terra. Of course, it's been a while since Cadia fell us how long it takes, right? The Dark Angels are just hovering the planet, just, waiting for fallen.
Again, they're not loyalists. They're loyal to themselves. They're like, I love to imagine them looking down at all the demons streaming onto Terra. They're like, that looks dangerous. Good thing that's not our
Wow.
problem.
Sucks to be them.
Yeah, right. Well, because like on one hand, it's very funny. Like when the assassins just watch Hecaron get killed, right? You're like, what jerk? Oh, well, to be fair, the Dark Angels just basically are doing that same thing. They're like watching Terra burn, and they're just like, God, that was bad.
But we expect that from the Dark Angels. Expect better out of the assassins.
Really?
I do.
You expect better out of contract killers?
Okay, because they're supposed to be loyalists, yes.
Yeah, but their whole thing.
Yes.
Gen.exe has stopped working.
They are on Terra, correct? They are supposed to be loyal to the Emperor, correct? The Custodes is one of the Emperor's chosen. Yes?
But they're assassins. They have what you
So?
might call a flexible morality when it comes to the bigger
Okay.
picture.
Wasn't
Also-
one of them a Vindicari? Could they not have made those shots to save him?
And then gotten killed themselves, and the sword risks falling into
Now,
these assholes'
you know what?
hands
I'm
who they
not
don't know who they are.
I'm not questioning the Vindicari skill. A real Vindicari plus a Calidus there, please.
Cypher's pretty difficult to deal with because they don't know what's going on. They
Cypher
don't
wasn't
look at
there.
that,
It was Mordecai.
but they don't know who that is. They don't look at him and are like, "Oh, that's the librarian for the Dark Angels."
No, but
right?
they knew
Like,
it
they had
wasn't.
no
But they
idea.
knew it wasn't Cipher. That's the point. They knew it wasn't Cipher. They still could have intervened.
Yes, and also the Dark
You know why they
Angels could
didn't
have
intervene?
intervened.
Because they were being petty. That's why they didn't intervene. And that's what I don't like.
I disagree.
Sorry, you're wrong.
Well, fuck you.
Drink some more wine.
Things are getting heated in the Cipher fandom.
Just drink some more.
Here's the funny thing. We both liked this book.
Or-
Look, is it great value Alfarius? 100%. Did I love it? Oh my God, yes.
I take serious offense to calling this great value Alfarius.
Cipher 2, Electric Boogaloo, the ciphering. I wanted to come up with some like revengeance thing, and I just couldn't make like Scythe Vengeance or something. I just couldn't make it happen. I was really so. Where does Cipher go from here? Back into his little
Wherever the fuck he wants.
cabinet of fuckery? Like, it's just gonna be like, and I'm off to be the budget version of Alfarius.
Well,
and
you know, he's have a good story of how he got off Terra. He's gone now.
that's true. He's gonna have to find new loyalist followers, and they're gonna, or like fallen followers.
Which, you know, with
fallen.
the lion around now, that just makes
Falleners?
things more interesting.
Fallon. Can you imagine if those two meet up?
Oh my god!
I would like to imagine those two
what
just
if
staring at each
Cypher-
other like, so.
I wonder if he's going to look for Luther. If he finds Luther.
Wait, isn't he the one who busts him out at the end of that Luther novel?
No.
Isn't he the one who's there and is like, let's go?
I thought Luther just walked out the door.
Oh, pretty much, yeah, because he realizes he's free and he's like, and I'm out!
Azariel left the door
It's
open.
been swell!
Azariel was raised in a barn and closed the door behind him.
Close the door,
Azariel.
you savage!
Did I ever say Azariel? Azriel.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard that, and I was like, do you listen to too many audiobooks, Pumpkin?
No, they don't say, well, I've never listened to a modern one, so I can't say if they say Azariel or Azriel, but I can't believe I said Azariel. I'm so used to the Zahariel.
Or is it
Corlael.
because Azriel's the cat from Smurfs? Is that why you couldn't say it?
Could be, because
Well, you know
actually that is what the first thing I think of, even though I know Azriel is one of the names of Lucifer and all of that, but that's usually where I go, is I think of this stupid
Azriel's
cat.
one of his original OG followers of Pandemonium, which makes it really funny that he's a Dark Angel. Or not, if you don't like the Dark Angels.
Honestly, I find it rather interesting, fitting.
If somebody was like, why don't you like the Dark Angels? I would be like, here's some literature. Have fun. Call with any questions. Take Midol for cramps.
like just to, follow Mordecai, and that's exactly why Jen does not like the Dark Angels.
And yet I loved this book. And I think it's actually...
See, all right, you hate the Dark Angels. You loved Luther. You loved that book.
Okay, so I was just about to say that one of the things that's very interesting to me about this is that...
Oh shit, you like the Fallen. You don't like Dark Angels, but you like the Fallen. That's what this is.
First off, watch your mouth. Second off.
Luther, Cipher.
No, I like, because I think both books show what I hate about the Dark Angels, because Luther, if you recall, they're basically the architects of their own descent into not being loyalists anymore. But then those guys, the chapter masters, constantly blame Luther. This is your fault. No, it's not, dude. You didn't listen to the guy.
That's what I loved about Luther, that book.
I loved that too. But again, that book, when I read it, I was like, so that would be my two things. I'd be like, here's Luther, and then follow it up with Cipher. This is why I hate the Dark Angels, because they're asshats. They're
a good
petulant, childish asshats.
Good way of summing up Luther is that video about how Frozen should have gone, where it's how the animated thing was like, how
yes. It took me a second to think.
Yeah, where the trolls are like, so you need to make sure that she doesn't learn fear, like, so we need to shut her away. What? That's not what I said at all.
That's not what I said at all.
Make sure nobody ever talks to her. What? You're terrible parents. That's what I think of with Luther.
Exactly. That's what that, and this, but again, this, like, it shows that contrast between them and the Dark Angels, and how much, and again, that book too also dealt with how little they take responsibility for their own failings. Well, it's not my fault. It was Luther's fault. He led me wrong. And this book, it's not our dishonor. We're not evil.
It's true.
You're evil.
That was actually one thing I loved about Phil Kelly's book, War of Secrets.
Yes.
Same thing.
Same.
We
So
just
basically,
killed an entire successor chapter. That's not our fault.
Because
because there's a Fallen around. So that's not really our fault.
Oh, and also, in true traitorous fashion, we made a deal with the Tau. I mean, let's be real, who hasn't?
So it's
in their time.
So it's funny because it illustrates why she hates them, and it illustrates why I love them, because I find it fun. It's so great because, like, she loves, like I say, she's not even here. Jen loves some of these traitor
I'm being
legions.
talked about like I'm not even here.
Right. So generally,
Continue.
traitor legions like the Iron Warriors and the World Eaters, she finds them fun. I find them utterly repugnant, but she actually finds them fun because they are so utterly repugnant. So it's kind of fun to see this dichotomy. So actually, I love that you're drinking out of your World Eaters mug because it fits with what you were saying.
My poor dumb tragic rage monsters. I just love them. And I totally admit this. So let me make this very clear because so if anybody has ever seen Megamind, and I know I've referenced this before, if you've seen Megamind, there's a scene where Megamind is talking with Titan, this villain that he has created, and he's trying to banter back and forth, and he throws an insult out to Titan, and he's like, now you say something back. And this is 100% whenever I'm like, God, I hate these bitter ass, petulant children who can't take responsibility for their actions. Never forget that my favorite legion are the bitter man children, the Iron Warriors. And it's also one of those things where I'm like, now you insult my legion. Like, let's have a rapport here and let's go back and forth. I really loved this book though. I went into this book kind of like, much like Luther too, though. And I think I like things that lay bare where I can be like, yep, that's why I don't like the Dark Angels. But it helped that Luther was a fun book.
I do the same thing, right? Because like these books was like, this is why I don't like the Space Wolves. And it's so funny because with those books, Jen's like, hate this book because we did the Space Wolves. And I'm like, hey, this is why I hate them because they act like this.
They don't, though. They only do when Gav Thorpe writes them. All of a sudden, they're just like, nah.
Oh, like I've seen some things in the Horus Heresy.
Well, I have two. I've read most of the books that started the story of Space Wolves. Because I get very choosy and leapfrog and hop, skip, and jump all over the place. No, I am really glad that we read this book. It taps into meta problems that I have, but I enjoyed it. I am excited though. I'm super excited because we've read a lot of 40k. We've read a lot of Space Wolves. Read a lot of Space Marines and bolter porn and stuff like that. But finally, we get to go back into Warhammer Crime. Do y'all remember when Warhammer Crime was going to be the next big thing? Pepperidge Farms remembers.
I do.
Yeah. It's been a really long time since we last had a Warhammer Crime novel, and The King of Spoils has me very excited. I am
new author too.
Yes, I am excited for this. I like a good cyberpunk story, and I understand that you can make a very real argument that a lot of Warhammer 40k falls into the cyberpunk genre, but this one in particular sounds very cyberpunky. Like
that explains why you like the Mechanicum. That just now dawned on me because you like cyberpunk shit.
I love cyberpunk stuff. Oh my god, why can't I think of the guy who wrote the OG of cyberpunk? Neil Stephenson. Sounds very much like a Neil Stephenson novel, and I'm jazzed. And it's Warhammer Crime. Like, we get to take a break between, like, major lore-altering things. And by the way, for the record, I don't think this book ended in a call to Robbie Bobby.
No.
I mean, it might have, but to be fair, I think the next call is to the Lion. Like, oh, Bob hasn't checked his messages. Somebody call Lion.
I don't think they call Robbie Bobby over this for a few reasons. One, because the world is going to shit and he's got other things on his mind. And honestly, he did not forget because he doesn't forget. He's like an elephant. He doesn't forget because that's Robbie Bobby. But it's just probably not on his top his priority list right now. What happens? Some wayward dark angels. Like, he really doesn't know what their purpose is. He's got other things going on.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, like when they're like, oh, dude, like the dark angels are acting sus. He's probably like, did you meet my brother?
Right.
Like this all seems very standard to me. No, you don't understand. Like, they were in places they weren't supposed to be. Yeah. And water is wet. I feel as though, and now that the Lion is back, like, that's my next thing that I'm excited about. But I am excited, like, as much as I want to see the Lion so badly, I'm kind of excited to do just like I love the crime books. There actually has not been I haven't read any of the short story collections, like
So there has been like new ones of those, but there hasn't been a single Warhammer crime novel that we've read that I have not liked.
They just announced a new short story collection.
Of course they did.
In that as well. It's coming out in, hold please, because you know that page that they update like bi-yearly whether it needs to be updated or not. They just announced, it's called Once a Killer, and it comes out in October of 23, and I'm actually pretty excited. Randomly, it has Mitch Scanlon story in it.
Whoa! Oh my
Right?
God, he wrote the first Dark Angels book in the Horus Heresy.
There's also a Jonathan D. Beer who's writing this book, and then there's something by Mike Brooks. So, then Nick Kime.
I'll be picking it up regardless. I have them all.
Oh, same.
Have I read them?
Loading bar.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear the question you asked. It was weird. Just cut out there really quickly. I am very excited for Warhammer Crime. So that'll be our next book for everybody. And we'll have a little bit more time to read it than we did Cipher, but Cipher was
short.
Fun as hell.
Let me tell you how short Cipher is. I lost track of time. I read the book from cover to cover last night.
It's like 180 pages. Again.
Well, my copy was 159, but I read the afterword, which if you do have the limited edition, read the afterword. That was fascinating. Mainly because I'm kind of happy to know that John French is as big of a research nerd with stuff as I am. So that just made me kind of happy. So I guess I'm going to take us out. Yes?
Please take us out.
I don't know I have no idea what happened there. That was so weird. Like everything just kind of blanked out on my computer. So anyway, so
it's called alcohol carry.
No, like
Drink
I'm serious.
water.
Like, I see out the corner of my eye with OBS, like it just blanked out. So I'm sorry, everybody on the video. Like I have no idea what just happened. That's okay. Maybe we shouldn't drink ever again. I'm sorry. So anyway, so you've listened to the Warhammer 40k book club episode regarding Cipher, Lord of the Fallen by John French. Be sure to join us next time for The King of the Spoil by Jonathan D. Beer. You have an awesome last name, sir. We are an unofficial book club and not affiliated with the Black Library or any of its affiliates. You can find both the vidcast and podcast on our website, WH40kbookclub.com. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, give a review, and all those wonderful things to the vidcast on YouTube or the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Our site also has articles about our adventures and reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside of the book club books. So please stay a while and read from a crag. By the way, I hunt fallen angels. This is a wonderful gift from my friend Jen.
She sounds awesome. Maybe we shouldn't drink again.
Let us know in the comments below if you like it when we drink or not. Seriously.
When mommy and mommy fight.
Oh, everybody loves it when mommy and mommy fight. But just, if you're like, you guys are crazy when you drink, stop doing it. We'll stop.
Please. But it's been a week.
And it's been a week.
Gets you some Viognier. Porch pounder.
That sounded fancy. Is that Colteris?
It's actually Bookcliff, and we had to store it in a cooler so the front label is missing. So it almost looks like moonshine. I can't do moonshine, but there you go. There you go. It's Bookcliff. Viognier. Get you some. Kind of chartreusey looking.
Kind of is.
Cheers, everyone.
Where is your chartreuse book?
Oh, my chartreuse book has been shuffled down in the list here because I'm kind of redoing what the books are up there. And
you need to put it back where everybody can see it.
Yeah, but I've forgotten about the chartreuse, much like Games Workshop has.
Poor Gav Thorpe.
I have to figure out how to get the Fall of Cadia Ellie up there because damn, son. Yes, but I do have this nice doorstop. The End of the Death, which is part 1 of the 8-part series by Dan Abnett. I can't wait for Magneto and Mystique to come in. It turns out that the whole time Euphrates Keeler was Mystique.
I regret
Comic book humor.
I regret telling you what I learned today, which was that did you guys know that Sherlock Holmes was always Mystique? Did you know this? Did you know? I'm going to end with that thought nugget.
Good flames.
Good
on
night,
the side
everybody.
of my face.
See,
Heavy breathing.
This is why people are not going to let us drink anymore. Because we bring Mystique into it. And you know what? I can't blame him.
Euphrates Keeler is Mystique. I'm calling it now in the book 7 of The End and the Death. Have a good night.
You know what? I totally would believe it. Good night, everybody.